We're back here, and we have got London calling, Di. How's that?
And as a lot of people listening would know, if we've got someone on the other line from London, it'd be a very different time for us. We're here at 6:30 at night.
We are.
Yeah, and I'm really sort of chomping at the bit for a wine.
a little vino. Well, we've had to wake him up. So who have we got?
Yeah, well, I'll have you know, guys, we're very excited to have with us Johann Hari. Look, so many ways I could have gone into this intro, but I threw this into the script. There are people who report on the world. Then there are people who quietly rewire how we see it. Johan, your extensive research is astounding. This is one of his books, Lost Connection. Look at the back. Nicola will demonstrate for me.
Yes, yeah.
That is just all quotes, and as you were just talking about Sam, our producer,
underlined. I think you've scribbled on every single page.
Look, I did counselling years ago, so I'm obsessed by this book. So is our producer, who's a life coach. So congratulations on the research. It's actually astounding. I think there was 80 pages of it in this one book. Johann Hari has spent many years pulling at threads most of us don't even realise we're tangled in. From addiction to attention spans and depression, the invisible forces shaping how we live, your insightful words have spread no doubt, as Johan has been on Oprah, Steve Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, Jay Shetty, Dr. Chatterjee. We saw Dr. Chatterjee and many, many more. So like quite honestly, and I know Steve Bartlett had Johan on many, many times, and that says a lot about what the beautiful words that you speak. But today, this isn't about his many amazing books that Nicola and I and Sam have just fascinated by, which is from Chasing the Scream to Lost Connection, Stolen Focus and the Magic Pill. Today it's about the man behind them, the questions he asked when things just didn't add up, and the personal cost of going through looking for answers. From addiction to depression to our disappearing attention spans, Johann Hari has a habit of taking the things we think we understand and completely flipping them. So let's climb over the back fence a little and see what's really going on with Johann Hari. And welcome to Over the Back Fence, Johan.
Thank you so much for a lovely intro. And I just think, as you were saying that morning, so I think the biggest division between human beings is not left wing versus right wing. It's not atheists versus religious people. It's morning people versus everyone else. And I am so deeply not a morning person that it's a miracle that I am conscious. I've structured my entire fucking life so I don't have to be awake at this time of day. So
hey,
thank you.
We get it, and we're grateful. And I kind of get that. Just to get you on, it was not a morning person, and we're not going to let you off. But thank you for also making that exception, putting that alarm clock on early, and look at you make it. You're looking damn good.
Yeah, you're good.
And I'm going to say,
I also once, by the way, tried to climb over a garden fence, got stuck on it, and the testicular pain I experienced were horrific flashbacks. I will not be climbing over any fucking garden fences for anyone ever again.
Sorry, guys, the noise. That is hysterical. And the consequence, are we still okay down there?
It's doing well now, but it took some time.
So much information. TMI, Di. Well, look, welcome, and we just also want to say too, we've got the mutual friend, and all of us, Joe, we're so proud of her too, is Sarah Grinberg.
Brilliant.
And you
Sarah.
took her touring with her as well. And I got to say, I saw you, and I think a lot of the other Aussies in Sydney when you were actually the keynote speaker at the South by Southwest.
Oh, yeah.
And just to get into that room, you just blew the room away. So that was just fantastic, sort of to hear you live, and to get you at our back fence is fantastic. And it's funny. So we actually share a back fence.
I heard about this.
Yeah, but
and you're not jumping over it, Johan.
But I've heard, and correct me, we're going to start it off. I believe that, do you like Home and Away? Is that correct?
So I love Home and Away, but Neighbours, it's the closest thing I've ever had to a religious experience was in Melbourne when I went to the set when Pinnock Court, where Neighbours is filmed. And I'm actually embarrassed to say I literally burst into tears when I went. It was like, wow. Because I watched it with my so me and my grandmother, So I was raised by my grandmother. My mother was ill when I was a kid. My dad was in a different country, so I was brought up mostly by my grandmother, who was an incredible woman, and she left school when she was 14. Yeah, and we used to every day. So Australia was. There's many reasons why I think I gel with Australians, but like part of it was such an important part of my formation. So every day I remember it so clearly. We would watch The Young Doctors, A Country Practice, and Sons and Daughters, and then Neighbours Home and Away. So like a huge part of my like mental formation of how the world worked came from. I actually had this really. The first time I ever came to Australia, I had this really weird experience because it was when my first book, Chasing the Scream, which is about addiction, came out, and I flew to Sydney, and I had never been to Australia before, and this must be 2015, and I couldn't sleep the night before, and I couldn't sleep on the flight, and I was fucking delirious by the time I landed. I thought I misread the schedule because I misread the thing where you go forward a day. I thought I had like a whole day before I went to speak at the Opera House, right? So I landed, I meet Hermione, my amazing Australian publicist, and she's like, great, so we're heading to the Opera House, right? And I was like, what? So we sort of pushed on stage, and I made this really bad joke that led to this really weird thing. So I said, I have to say, I've been in Australia for 5 hours or whatever it was, and I said, and I have to say, I'm really disappointed. And everyone looked like puzzled. And I said, because, you know, I was raised, you know, me and my grandmother, we watched Sons and Daughters every day. And which people who don't remember was a genius Australian soap opera. And I said, and I've now been here for 5 hours and no one has kidnapped me and replaced me with an identity. I really feel. And then I said,
that's
which was a bit
fabulous.
You guys laughed a bit more than the audience did, and I had this really bad habit if I tell a joke and people don't laugh, I go further. So I said,
I love it. I get that.
And I said, is Reg Grundy, who made those shows, is he still alive? And someone in the audience said yes. And I said, well, God should strike him dead for the way he misled me about the nature of Australia. And it was slightly awkward, and I just moved on, right? Anyway, a few days later, I turned on the news.
Died. No.
And Reg Grundy had died.
Stop.
So I now feel like,
are you kidding me?
I feel like now, wwhenever I speak to Australians, I have the power to just strike prominent Australians dead if I go for it.
We'll wish us all the best.
See you later, bye.
So I'm tempted to ask you if Tony Abbott is still alive, but I'm not going to do it.
Oh my God,
that's so
you're
funny.
so good.
I love it. Well, you know what? You started
love a good
off,
laugh.
and we know it's fascinating.
Because the subject we're discussing is,
and so tell us about, especially maybe, I think everyone does know you, but for the people who don't know, and we'd like to know more about, you know, where a lot of things stem and that from your childhood. Can you share a bit about that, Johan?
Yeah, I'm a little bit careful of talking about it because obviously my family's still alive. So I was telling you guys this just before we came on.
We love your grandmother.
My grandmother was an amazing.
I love her, and I don't even know her.
My grandmother just opposite this laptop. So I grew up in London. My parents. The reason we were talking before we came on air about the reason I have this weird name is that my parents. My dad was from the Swiss mountain. My parents were both runaways, basically. My dad ran away he was from this very stifling, conservative little village in the Swiss Alps called Kandersteg. He ran away from that. It was the 60s. He came to London. And my mum was from a, working class Scottish tenement where women were, treated like shit. And she ran away to London as well. And they met here, and my dad literally spoke almost no English. His English is still pretty bad after all these years. And my mum, obviously, she only spoke English. And they had what my mother calls a series of one-night stands, which I've tried to explain is not a concept that makes sense. And because there's lots of them. And she got pregnant. They thought they had to get married. And then he learned English, and she always says, he seemed so fucking nice when I couldn't understand what he was saying. And then she cried. That was my brother, then they had my sister, and they had me. But
that's actually brilliant.
Well, she had a few one-night stands.
So Mum was a bit out there.
Wow. And
yeah, they're both. One of the reasons I love talking to Australians is I can quote my mother, because my mother swears constantly, and she's unquotable in any other context. But she's a very, she's a tough working class Scottish woman. She smokes 70 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
There's an amazing photo of me and her when I'm a baby, where she's breastfeeding me, smoking, and resting the ashtray on my stomach. And when
I shouldn't laugh, but it's a pretty amazing image. Seriously.
I found this like years ago, and I showed it to her. I thought she'd feel guilty. She said, "You were a difficult fucking baby. I needed that." And I wanted to put the photo in one of my books. And she's like, "You're not putting my tits in your fucking book." But
she tells you how it is.
God, I'm in love with her, honestly.
Yeah.
They're both very. My parents are very. Some people go, "Oh, my family's crazy," and they mean, I don't know. I've got an overpossessive Jewish mother saying, "My family is crazy, like the fucking Chucky doll. It's crazy, right? They are genuinely crazy." So when people meet them, they're like, "Oh, I thought you were joking when you described them." They're much more
You know what? We love a bit of crazy.
Sorry. It's the funniest terminology.
Isn't it?
Chucky doll.
That is funny. But
sorry.
We like a little bit of madness.
My God.
So when you come from a family where there's a lot of, there was a lot of addiction in my family. There was a lot of mental illness. And a lot of love, particularly my grandmother was a very loving and stable force in my life. I think what it gives you is, some people it just breaks them, right? Some people, it's a terrible experience, they don't recover, or they don't get to form properly. I'm not meant to talk about this, so don't let me talk about it much, but I'm finishing my next book, which is about next year, and I was just in Las Vegas interviewing a serial killer who had this very extreme childhood. And obviously some people have extreme childhoods and it just stunts them or misshapes them, or but I think some people, what it can do, what I think it did for me, is it can give you a ability to be present with other people's distress and pain, and sort of not run away from it and not recoil from it, and actually weirdly an ability to think about other people's distress and pain. I think that's what it gave me. It's that a kind of by growing up around quite a lot of extreme things, by seeing and experiencing quite a lot of extreme things when I was a kid, I don't think it's a coincidence. It's obviously not a coincidence that I had that kind of childhood and I write about the things I write about. But I think it also meant that I could, sit with it. Also, when you love people, who've had very extreme experiences, or I think I don't know the right way to put it. I think it can. Well, you want to find answers, right? You want to understand it better. And so I think a lot of my books was me trying to make sense of my own childhood, right? Well, what happened? What was really going on there? That was a long answer, sorry.
No.
Not at all.
And I'll tell you what a gift to the world by those sometimes those hard times are there, that you have got that real connection with so many people, and you can express it so well. And was that one of your things of, really it is, and getting into the flow and becoming a journalist?
I think.
How did that come about?
I think it's. I think about storytelling. I got a really nice email a little while ago from someone I was at primary school with, and she said, who I hadn't seen since, and she'd seen me being interviewed somewhere, and she said, "Oh, I remember that you used to write these stories and read them out to the class, and you would write about all of us." And I realized that I think partly, it's also rooted in that childhood thing. If you're in a very chaotic environment, I think I coped anyway through storytelling. I think it was also partly, my dad didn't speak very good English, and my mother was from a very different context. She was from a working class family. We were in a kind of middle class area. I was growing up in a middle class area, and I think I was translating all the time for my parents. I think they felt, probably rightly, that I understood how this environment worked much better than they did. So I think there's that thing about, if you're, and this is true of a lot of children of immigrants, but if you're sort of translating for your parents and you're making sense of the world for your parents from when you're a very young age, I think that that's probably where some of my storytelling kicked in. I also think I wasn't being given stories about what was happening a lot of the time, so I had to sort of make sense of the world. I also think I just coped with the kind of chaos in the environment by escaping into stories. I was constantly reading, I was constantly writing, or I was curled up with my grandmother on the bed watching Australian soap operas, which are wonderful.
That's great.
I don't mean this bit as a joke, actually. They're like, it's actually a very pure form of storytelling, a soap opera, right? There's nothing outside the story. The story never ends, right? Like, or I mean, Neighbours House ended now, but it goes. It's an open-ended story. So I think that was, and it's funny actually. I think this might also be another reason why my books resonate well in Australia. It sounds like a silly point, but I don't mean it in a silly way. I think almost the storytelling principles I learned from watching Aussie soaps are very deep in how my books work, right? Like, all my books are full of stories of people. Now they're true stories,
yes,
but they're structured like an episode. You could. I'm sure if I went back and watched A Country Practice, you would see all those principles there.
Yes.
So I think that those childhood elements were really important for me in lots of ways.
Yeah,
you asked about becoming a journalist. It was basically the only thing.
Yes.
Right? That was my
Richard,
only
you've
talent.
done it so well.
I think Nicola
Yes.
said the word flow. Your books, actually, I didn't expect that they would flow, but they do. Particularly with something when you're talking about addiction and anxiety and depression, I was like, oh, well, I'll get a chapter and move on. There was a flow, which I actually really enjoyed in a lot of your books, not that I've read them all. Let's have a look now. Let's have a look at, you've travelled over 30,000 odd miles to try and understand anxiety and depression. What was that like, and did you learn much, and have we moved on when it comes to diagnosing depression and anxiety? I mean, that's a big, loaded question. You answer it anyway, any way you want.
Well, it kind of blew my mind what I learned for research for Lost Connections, because, when I was a teenager, I'd gone through these very difficult experiences, and by the time I was, in my sort of mid-teens, I was quite depressed and anxious. And I remember going to my doctor, who was a very nice person, and being told, like, this is the 90s, lots of people were being told this at the time, being told, my doctor told me this, what I now know was a well-intentioned but very oversimplified story. My doctor said, well, we know what's going on here. You're lacking a chemical in your brain called serotonin. All you need is some drugs, you're going to be fine. And so I was given an antidepressant called Paxil or Seroxat. It's the same thing in different names in different countries. And I took it and I felt a lot better at first. And then that feeling of pain came back. So I was given a higher dose. Again, I felt better. Again, that feeling of pain came back. And I was running this cycle of taking higher and higher doses until for 13 years I was taking the maximum possible dose. And I was still really quite depressed. And I thought, well, there must be something wrong with me, because I've been told what's wrong with me and I've been given the treatment and I still feel like shit. What's going on here? And then it got to the point where, it'd been such a long time. And I also realized, by that time, how old was I? I was in my 30s. And I realized, and this is still true now, by the way, every year that I've been alive, diagnosed depression and anxiety have increased. In Britain, in the US, in Australia, almost every year. And I thought, what's going on here, right? How can it be? Why would it be that every year that passes, people are becoming more and more depressed? And I thought, well, if it was just a problem in people's brains, why would that be increasing every year? What's going on here? So like you say, I ended up going on this really big journey all over the world. I interviewed the leading scientists. I went to places that have pioneered completely different approaches to depression and anxiety. And what I learned is there's scientific evidence for 9 factors that can cause depression and anxiety. 2 of them are indeed in our biology. Your genes can make you more sensitive to these problems, though they do not write your destiny. And there are real brain changes that can happen as you become depressed and anxious that can make it harder to go back, but definitely not impossible. But most of the factors that cause depression and anxiety are not in our biology. They're factors in the way we live. And once you understand them, you can begin to deal with those factors. And I went to lots of places and met lots of people who had done that. And it opened up this completely different way of thinking about depression and anxiety to me that was really empowering. And the way I started to think about it is, I think in our culture, we have been given inaccurate maps of our pain, right? To get anywhere, to understand where you are and to get anywhere, you need to have a map, right? I'm sitting here in London. If I wanted to walk to Leicester Square from here, if you gave me a map that was wrong, I would never get to Leicester Square, right? In the same way, what my doctor did it was absolutely not my doctor's intention. My doctor was a lovely person. Was I was given an inaccurate, what I need, in my case, mostly what was playing out was unresolved childhood trauma, although there were some other things going on as well. And what I needed was help and practical support to deal with that trauma, to realize that what had happened was not my fault. I didn't deserve it. I had internalized a lot of these negative things that happened. That's what I needed, right? So being told that it was just a problem in your brain, although there may also have been some biological contributions to my depression, but being told it was just a problem in your brain, and all you need to do is drug yourself, set me off on completely the wrong path for 13 years. And it was only much later when I learned about these 9 causes that I write about in Lost Connections that for me, I realized, oh, this is the one that was the biggest for me. This is where I needed the most help. That it changed for me. So I needed a completely different map. And what I hope Lost Connections does is kind of help people to see the map that explains their pain and distress, not as a kind of intellectual exercise. I mean, that's fine if you want, but because that's how you get to the answers. That's how you get to the solutions, both for individuals and the kind of culture.
Well, can you share then for people who haven't read the book and don't know, when you sort of said that, like, what are some of the, is it connection? Is it the disconnection? What are some of the areas there that you've, in your search, you know, that really has helped you or could help other people listening, Johan?
They're all, so there's the 2 biological ones, and we can talk about them if you like, but the other 7 are all forms of disconnection from things that we need. You know, I would just say to everyone listening, everyone knows you've got natural physical needs. Obviously, you need food, you need water, you need clean air. If I took those things away from you, you know, you'd be in trouble really quickly. Yeah. But there's equally strong evidence that all human beings have natural psychological needs. You need to feel you belong. You need to feel you're safe. You need to feel your life has meaning and purpose. You need to feel that people see you and value you. There's all sorts of things that we need. And this culture we've built is really good at lots of things. I'm glad to be alive today. But we have been getting less and less good at meeting these deep underlying psychological needs for people for a really long time. So I'll give you an example of one that's particularly acute in Australia for reasons that are not totally clear to me. Think about loneliness, right? Contemporary Australia is one of the loneliest societies in human history. Britain is not far off. The US is not far off. The entire Western world is having an enormous crisis of loneliness. And I remember discussing this with an amazing man named Professor John Cacioppo, who was at Chicago University. Sadly, he died not long ago. But he was the leading expert in the world on loneliness. He was the first person to prove that loneliness causes depression. I know that sounds like a bit of a no shit.
Not depression causes loneliness.
Exactly. People thought it went the other way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes it does. You become depressed and then you become lonely.
Yes, but as a rule.
Exactly. He proved that loneliness causes depression.
Incredible.
And I never forget him saying to me one day, why do we exist? You, me, everyone you ever met. Why are we here? One key reason is that our ancestors on the savannas of Africa were really good at one thing. They weren't bigger than the animals they took down a lot of the time. They weren't faster than the animals they took down a lot of the time, but they were much better at banding together into groups and cooperating, right? That's why we survived. That's why we exist. Banding together is our superpower as a species. And loneliness evolved in that context as a signal telling you, if you got separated from the tribe in the context where we evolved, you were in terrible danger. Right? You could be attacked by an animal. If you got injured, you would just die. So loneliness evolved. When we are separated or cut off from the tribe, loneliness evolved as a signal saying, get back to the tribe, get back to the group. You're in danger. That is how we feel now. We're not on the savannas of Africa anymore, mostly, but that is how we feel. So when we are cut off, when we are lonely, we experience profound distress signals. Just like bees evolved to live in a hive, Humans evolved to live in a tribe, and we are the first humans ever to disband our tribes, and it's making us feel absolutely terrible. But the reason why it's important to understand that and many of the other insights is because of what it leads to next, right? So there's a group of doctors and scientists who built their reaction to depression around that insight. An amazing group here in London, in East London, where I used to live for a long time. So there's an amazing doctor called Sam Everington, who's one of the heroes of my book. And Sam was a family doctor, and he had loads of people coming to him with terrible depression and anxiety. And like me, he's in favor of chemical antidepressants for some people. He would prescribe them, but he could see a few things. Firstly, for most people who took them, not everyone, they took the edge off, but they didn't really solve the problem, right? They were still pretty lonely. So Sam pioneered a different approach that's now spreading all over Europe. The fancy term for it is social prescribing. It's really simple.
Love it.
I'll give you an example.
Prescribing.
Love it.
I love this.
I love that.
It's magic.
I'll give you an example. A woman called Lisa Cunningham, who'd been chronically depressed for 7 years, and he said to Lisa, "Don't worry, I'm going to carry on giving you these drugs, but I'm also going to prescribe for something else. I want you to come twice a week here to the doctor's offices to meet with a group of other depressed and anxious people, not to talk about how shit you feel. Do that if you want to, but that's not the point of it. I want you guys to find something meaningful that you could do together." So the first time the group met, Lisa literally started vomiting with anxiety. It was just so overwhelming to be around people again after so long. But people rubbed her back. They started talking, and they noticed behind the doctor's offices there was this area that was called Dog Shit Alley. It was like scrubland, basically, dogs were going shit. And they were like, "Why don't we turn Dog Shit Alley into a garden?" And these were inner city East London people like me. They didn't know anything about gardening, but they started to get books out the library. They started to watch videos about gardening on YouTube. They started to get their fingers in the soil.
Community.
They started to rhythms of the seasons, right? There's a lot of evidence that exposure to nature is a really powerful antidepressant, but they started to do something even more important. They started to form a tribe. They started to form a group. They started to care about each other. If one of them didn't show up, the others would go look at them and go, "Hey, what's wrong?" Right? They started to solve each other's problems. The way Lisa put it to me, I'll never forget this, is as the garden began to bloom, we began to bloom. Now, this research.
That's magic. Are you listening to Nicola here? Nicola's going, I just love it. I just love listening to Nicola.
No, it's true.
So
I'm kind of in tears.
No, it's beautiful.
I'm gripped by every single word.
I'm loving every minute of listening to both of you. Sorry. Go ahead.
First time I've had a woman gasp, I can tell you.
You're blooming good.
She's breathing here.
But there's research on this, relatively small amount of research, but it's really encouraging. One small study in Norway found this approach was twice as effective in reducing anxiety as chemical antidepressants. I think for kind of obvious reason, right? It's dealing with the real underlying reasons why people are depressed and anxious in the first place. And this is something I saw all over the world, from like Sydney to Sao Paulo to San Francisco, not just to cities that begin with the letter S. I don't know why I just did that.
I love it.
When you deal with the underlying reasons why people are depressed and anxious, it has an incredibly powerful effect.
I love the way you say, you're talking about in the Savannah about distress. I mean, I was reading in the book about your distress signal is not a malfunction. It's a necessary signal. And I often say to Nicola, what we resist will persist. So just unpack that a little bit about how, anyone listening right now maybe possibly overrides it or swallows it down, rather than experiencing it. It's like it's there for a reason to show you or teach you, or possibly the awareness to do something about that.
It's a few moments I had a real epiphany about this. So I was in Vietnam researching a different book, and that I haven't written yet. And even though it's like ages ago.
I love that.
There's a lot going on. I love it.
And I was interviewing survivors of the Vietnam War for this book. And so I was working with this brilliant Vietnamese translator and fixer, Huang. So he was sort of lining up the interviews for me, finding people and lining up the interviews. And we were doing it in different places, and we went back to Hanoi. And so I was in Hanoi, and one day I was exhausted, I was knackered, I was jet lagged, and I just bought an apple from a vendor on the side of a road, and I went back to my hotel, and I thought, oh, I'm being a good traveller. I'll wash it in bottled water. I know you don't wash it under the tap. I'm not stupid. And I bit into it, and it had this horrible metallic taste. I should have not eaten it, but I ate it. And for the next, you can see where this is going. For the next
It's like Snow White.
3-4 days,
I can see where this is going.
Yeah.
I had like horrendous food poisoning, and I was
the worst.
volcanically like vomiting and shitting, and I sort of just lay there, and I was like, oh, you know, I've just got to get through this. But by the time it got to when the 4th day was coming up, I was like, oh shit, I haven't got that much more time in Vietnam. So I said to Huang, look, I'll just bung myself up with Imodium and stuff. Like, we've got to go and carry on interviewing people. So we drove like 5 days out of Hanoi to this little village. And there's this woman, I can still picture her. I think she was 90. She was the only woman in her village who, along with her children, survived the Vietnam War. And we were sitting in her hut.
Gosh.
Wow. And I was interviewing her. And suddenly I had this feeling that,
uh-oh.
No.
Like, I've never had something before. It felt like the room was literally moving, right? And I've got this tape still. I just literally start vomiting and shitting all over this poor old woman's hut.
No.
I just said, look, just drive me back to Hanoi. I'll just have to lie in bed for another few days.
It's embarrassing.
Apologies won't work. Just get out. Yeah.
And this old woman goes to Huang, obviously in Vietnamese, be translated for me. This boy is really sick, and you need to take him to the hospital. And I was like, no. And Huang said to me, Johan, this is the only person who survived the Vietnam War. I am going to listen to her. I will advise over you.
Survival skills. I get it. I'll do what she says. Yeah, I love it.
Exactly. He took me to this like rural hospital. And he like lies and goes, this is a really important Westerner. We must make sure he survives, or we'll disgrace the people of Vietnam. So anyway, they start like jabbing me. They're doing everything. And it's funny. And I thought I was dying. And as I was lying there, I suddenly thought, because I was the most ill I've ever been. And it turned out what happened is, because I hadn't kept any fluids in for like 4 days, my kidneys had stopped working. It was like I was in the desert and like dying of dehydration.
But I remember,
that's so serious. Yeah.
I remember when I was, and they were sort of rehydrating me and everything, but I remember as I was lying there thinking, oh my God, I've been killed by a poisoned apple. I'm like Snow White. I'm like,
totally.
You've been targeted.
And your last thought is so fucking pretentious, right? But and I kept saying to them when I arrived at the hospital,
stay with it, listeners. This is amazing what he says.
The nausea was so extreme. I kept saying to them, give me something for the nausea. Take this nausea away. And the doctor said to me, you need your nausea. Your nausea will tell us what's wrong with you. And I remember even at the time thinking, oh, that's interesting. Anyway.
Digest that, guys, because there's a lot in that. Just say that again, because there's a lot in those words.
Yeah, you need your nausea. It will tell us what's wrong with you. And when I was leaving the hospital a few days later, I said to the doctor, what would have happened if I had ignored the nausea and we had just driven back to Hanoi? And he said, oh, you would have died on the journey. You wouldn't have got there.
So she saved your life.
Yeah. And this old woman, amazing.
Thank God.
Woman. And I remember.
That triggered something in you, those words?
Well, it stayed with me. And much later, I had another epiphany about it. So I went to interview this amazing South African psychiatrist called Dr. Derek Summerfield. And he told me about this other thing that happened actually in Southeast Asia that really made me reflect on that. So he was in Cambodia, not Vietnam, but he was in Cambodia in, I think it was 2001, when they first introduced chemical antidepressants in that country. They'd never had them before. And he was there, he was researching something else. But the doctors, the local Cambodian doctors said to him, oh, what are antidepressants? And he explained.
The doctor asked that?
Yeah. The Cambodian doctors asked him.
Don't you love it? What's an antidepressant? Wow.
Yeah, what is an antidepressant?
That's huge.
Yeah.
Good point. And he explained, he told them, and they said to him, oh, we don't need them, we've already got antidepressants. And he said, what do you mean? And he thought they were going to talk about like some herbal remedy or something. Instead, they told him a story. There was a farmer in their community who worked in the rice fields. And one day he stood on a wall left over from the war. One day he stood on a landmine left over from the war with the Americans, and he had his leg blown off. So they gave him an artificial limb. They're good at that. And then a few months later, he went back to work in the rice fields. But apparently it's very painful to work underwater when you've got an artificial limb. And I'm guessing it was pretty traumatic to, go back and work in the field where he got blown up. The guy started to cry a lot. After a while, he just refused to get out of bed. He developed what we would call kind of classic depression. The Cambodian doctor said, well, that's when we gave him an antidepressant. And they said, and Dr. Sommerfeld said, well, what was it? And they said, well, we sat with him. We listened to him. You only had to speak to the guy for 5 minutes to realize why he was so distressed. They realized that his pain made sense, right? They had an idea. They said, well, if we bought this guy a cow, he could become a dairy farmer. He wouldn't be in this position that was making him so distressed. So they bought him a cow. Within a couple of weeks, his crying stopped. Within a month, his depression was gone. It never came back. They said to Dr. Sommerfeld, so you see, doctor, that cow, that was an antidepressant. That's what you mean, right? If you've been raised the way we have.
Of course.
Well, my doctor told me, that sounds like a bad joke. I went to my doctor for an antidepressant. She gave me a cow. But what those Cambodian doctors
cow
knew
versus chemicals, like literally, like.
Yeah. And
amazing.
What those Cambodian doctors knew intuitively is what the leading medical body in the whole world, the World Health Organization, has been trying to tell us for years. If you're depressed, if you're anxious, you're not weak, you're not crazy, you're not in the main a machine with broken parts. You're a human being with unmet needs. And you'll notice what those doctors didn't do is go, well, buddy, it's on you. You go sort it out. Yes. The community together helped solve this problem, right? So the key thing I take away from both those experiences and a huge amount of the science that I learned is your pain makes sense. It's not a malfunction. The problem with what my doctor told me, and this was, again, stress was absolutely not her intention, is when you're told that your depression is just like a malfunction, what it does is it says your pain doesn't mean anything. It's like a glitch in a computer system. Your pain is not a glitch. Your pain is terrible. It's excruciating. It's awful. But it is telling you something really important. If I had not listened to that pain signal, that nausea signal when I was, my kidneys weren't working, I wouldn't be talking to you now. In the same way, we need to stop insulting this signal of depression and anxiety by saying it's a sign of weakness or craziness or just a biological malfunction, and start honoring it and listening to it. The fact that so many people in our culture and society are depressed and anxious is telling us about something that's going wrong, not in the individual, but in the society, in the way we're living. And if we listen to it and respect it, we can begin to solve it together by finding the better solutions that I've seen being put into practice all over the world.
Oh, bravo for sharing that, because brilliant. Every human on planet Earth, as we know, we all have pain and life is, we're not always happy. But, do you suggest, I like that also with the cow and also giving him another job, another purpose and something better. But would you say also it's so important then to sit in the pain for a period of time? And then where do you go to seek help? Is it through reading your books, or is it to go and see your friend or the one person that will listen? People now even listening go are in pain and sometimes haven't spoken to anyone about it. What's the first step?
Can I just cut in there? Because something I want to know with relative to that question, is the pain in the head, the thoughts, or is the pain in the body, or is it a combination? And then move on to that. Because I'm interested about feeling the pain. When someone's so depressed and full of anxiety, where are they feeling it?
Yeah, it's such an important question, and it's definitely both. But there's so many things I could say in response to that. But I'll give you an example of one. So I would say the first thing I would say is, if anyone is telling you, the causes of depression and anxiety are complicated. As I said, there's 9 of them that we know about. There's more we don't know about yet. And anyone who tells you there's one solution that everyone should do, don't listen to them. Right? Brilliant. Precisely because it's a complicated problem with a broad range of causes, we need to have a broad menu of solutions, which range from drugs for some people, to all sorts of other things. And what I'm arguing for is not taking anything off the menu, but massively broadening the menu options. So at the moment, pretty much, if you go to your doctor and depressed, you're offered drugs, right? There's one thing on the menu.
Yeah.
So and that did help me for a little while, and it helps some people for longer, and some people it doesn't help them at all. It's a range of responses to the drugs, but the broader menu of solutions. I'll give you an example of one that I was thinking about also in relation to your question about the body. Where is it? Is it in the body or is it in the mind? If I tell you the story for about 2 minutes, you're going to think, what the fuck is he talking about? It's got nothing. This doesn't.
No, we love it. We love your stories.
I'm going to pass some Maltesers.
I don't think you can really understand it if you don't understand how he discovered it. So in the early 1980s, there was a doctor in San Diego called Vincent Felitti, who I got to know much later, who was approached by a company, a not-for-profit medical provider called Kaiser Permanente. They're one of the big providers in California. And they said to him, we've got a problem. We don't know what to do about it. Please help us. The problem they had was obesity was hugely rising. It was actually quite low compared to today, but it was rising and rising. And they said to him, we don't know what to do about this. Nothing we do works. We give people diet plans, it's not working. We give people exercise plans, it's not working. Could we give you a load of money to just do blue skies research and figure out what would help solve this problem? They gave him loads of money, and he said, yep, I'll do it. And then he's like, what should I do? So he started to work with 250 very severely obese people who weighed more than 300 pounds, who'd tried lots of other solutions and hadn't found any. And Dr. Felitti had an idea that sounds, and in fact is, quite stupid. He said, what would happen if severely obese people literally just stopped eating, and we gave them vitamin C jabs so they didn't get scurvy or whatever? Would they just burn through the fat supplies in their bodies and get down to a healthy weight? So with a load of medical supervision, they tried it. And incredibly, at first, it worked. So there's a woman who I'm going to call Susan, that's not her real name, who went down from being, I think she was 350 pounds to 138 pounds. It was an extraordinary physical transformation. And there was similar transformations were happening with lots of people. And, Susan's family were calling her to congratulate him, saying, he'd saved her life. Dr. Felitti had saved her life. And then one day something happened that no one expected. She cracked. She went to KFC or whatever it was. And she quite quickly started gaining loads of weight. She didn't go back to exactly where she was, but she gained a lot of weight. And Dr. Felitti called her into his office and he said, Susan, what happened? And she looked down, she was really ashamed. She kept saying, I don't know what happened. And he said, well, tell me about the day that you cracked. Was there anything that happened that day that didn't happen any other day? And it turned out something had happened that day that had in fact never happened to Susan before. She was in a bar and a man hit on her, not in a nasty way, in quite a nice way, but she felt really freaked out and went and started eating. Mm-hmm. And that's when Dr. Felitti asked her, when did you start to gain your weight? And in her case, I think it was when she was 12. He said, well, did anything happen when you were 12 that didn't happen when you were 9 or 14? Anything in particular happened that year? And she looked down and she said, well, that's when my grandfather started to rape me. He interviewed everyone in the program. He discovered that 60% of the women had made their weight gain in the aftermath of being sexually abused or assaulted. And at first he was just completely baffled by this. He was like, well, how can that be? And Susan explained it to him really well. She said, overweight is overlooked, and that's what I want to be, right? Mm. And he realized, of course you can be sexually assaulted, whatever body shape you have, but at some degree you're less likely to be sexually assaulted if you're overweight. And Dr. Felitti realized this thing that seemed dysfunctional and obviously is bad for your health in one way, was performing a profoundly positive function for these women and a few of the men. Yes. I was protecting them from potentially sexual violence. But what happened? What happened next in his breakthrough? I think it starts to answer some of your question. I think is really important. So after they'd done this, this is a small study, right? it's 250 people. It's a big finding. So they wanted to do much more detailed study. So Dr. Felitti went to the Centers for Disease Control and he got funding to do a massive study. Every single person who went for healthcare from Kaiser Permanente in San Diego across a whole year, doesn't matter what for, schizophrenia, broken leg, anything, was given a questionnaire. And at first it was just going to say, were you sexually abused when you were a child and what's your weight? But luckily for us, they made it a bit more detailed. They asked, did any of these 10 bad things happen to you when you were a child? Things like being neglected, sexually abused, and so on. And then they asked, have you had any of these problems as an adult? And one of them was being obese, but then there were things like having an injecting drug problem, suicide attempts, depression. And when they added up the figures, at first they thought, no, this doesn't make sense. Go and do them all again. This is crazy. And the figures were correct. For every category of childhood trauma you had, you were 2 to 4 times more likely to become depressed, anxious, addicted, or obese. But when you got into the multiple categories, the figures were just crazy. If you had had 6 categories of childhood trauma, you were 3,100% more likely to have an injecting drug problem and 4,600% more likely to have attempted suicide. I mean, you just don't get figures like that in science very often. That's wild. So what this proved is that so many forms of childhood trauma, particularly if there are multiple forms of childhood trauma, can cause these problems. And at first, to be honest, when I heard that, when I interviewed Dr. Felitti, I thought, well, that's fucking depressing, because I'd had all this childhood trauma and I thought it was saying, oh, you're just screwed then. But what he discovered next, I think, is the most important finding.
Yes.
So after they had done this research and after people had given these answers in San Diego, they had all these thousands of people who had told their doctors they had been sexually abused or physically abused or neglected. So they were, and they didn't know what to do with this. So their doctors were told, next time that person comes in, say to them something like, I see that when you were a child, you were sexually abused, or whatever the nature of the abuse was. I'm really sorry that happened to you. That should never have happened. Would you like to talk about it? And 40% of people said, I don't want to talk about it, but 60% of people did want to talk about it. And they wanted to talk about it on average for 5 minutes. And then some of them, it was random. Some of them were told, I can refer you to a therapist to talk about it more. What's mind-blowing is just those 5 minutes of an authority figure saying, I'm so sorry. That should never have happened to you. You should have been protected. That alone led to a significant fall in depression and anxiety.
Oh, it validated.
Well, I think the core of it is, and this is a really important thing, there's been lots of other people who've made these findings subsequently, it's not the trauma that fucks you. It's the shame about the trauma.
Right.
It's the internalization of what you're told by the abuser. And giving a safe place to, if we think about the principle of the cow, anything that reduces depression to me is an antidepressant. That doctor saying that was an antidepressant. The social prescribing program, that was an antidepressant. The cow was an antidepressant. So what I go through in Lost Connections are loads of antidepressants. So absolutely, if you're depressed, what you need is an antidepressant, but what you need is an antidepressant matched to the underlying causes of your depression. So it depends what caused the depression is what you need. So we need to, so for some people it will be releasing the shame about their loneliness. For some people, it will be gaining more control over their work. Not having control over your work is a really powerful cause of depression. For some people, it will be reconnecting with nature. Disconnection from the natural world is a really powerful antidepressant. For some people, it will be social prescribing or finding ways to connect with other people. For some people, it's about connecting with more meaningful values, because if you've been taught that life is all about money and showing off on social media, that's going to make you feel like shit. There's a big, and there's many more that I go through in the book. So if I said to you, oh, here's the one thing that's going to solve it, that would be bullshit, because I don't know you, right? I don't know the person who's listening who needs that help. But what I can do is tell you, well, these are the causes that we know, the scientific evidence shows, that cause depression. And these are the experiments that have been done all over the world that have been built on those insights to start to deal with them.
Oh, Johan, you know what? That is so.
You often talk about rock bottom.
Yeah, the rock bottom, but that helps so many people, because so many things is going, you blame yourself, or you don't realize that. Even we had Dr. Frank Anderson on, he was sort of saying really the only way you've got to address the childhood trauma. And I love it when you sort of say, when someone hears you and listens to you and says it's not your fault. And for everyone listening too, you're not alone in different ways. So I hope that helps so many people.
I agree.
And your work does.
What do you say? You say, I love your line where you say social prescribing gives people routes to reconnection. I love that.
You know, one of the most moving conversations I ever had in my life was in Adelaide. It was with just outside Adelaide. It was with a 90-year-old woman. I haven't written this up yet. So I won't use her name just because I promised
Wasn't it with you and 90-year-old women?
Yeah.
I love it.
Sorry.
She was a woman who, amazing woman who, she was part of the stolen generations. She was an Aboriginal woman who had been stolen from her mother and put in a actually what we should call a re-education camp, like they do in China. Calling it a children's home, I think is great. It's not a children's home. It's a re-education camp where she was, you know, not allowed to speak her language, never saw her mother again, wasn't even allowed to talk to her own siblings. I mean, just literally made to chant, I need to act white, think white. I mean, just deranged and sickening. And she talked about in her 50s or 60s, she went back to the community that she'd been stolen from for the first time. And obviously her mother had died many years before. Yeah, she never saw her mother again. But she said, you know, she told me, I realized that little girl, she was 5 when she was stolen from her mother. She said, I realized I needed to go and take that 5-year-old girl by the hand, and I needed to go back to her, and I needed to bring her to safety. And it's really stayed with me, that. And she talked about kind of how healing for a lot of people, that's the kind of healing they need. So you think about saying to that woman, and I think if you think about it in Aboriginal context, so I remember in Canada, First Nations people in Canada were treated very similarly to how Aboriginal people in Australia were treated, i.e. very badly. And I'll never forget, there was a First Nations woman I met in Saskatchewan so they had been through these horrific traumas, and very similar actually to stolen generations. And partly as a result, there's a lot of addiction among First Nations people. And this kind of very Western model of addiction treatment, which is very good for some people, saved the life of some people I love, but was kind of imposed on them. And never forget, this woman said to me, you know, I was stolen from my mother. I was abused in a children's home. And then when I was an adult and I was addicted because of the trauma, a white social worker turned up and told me I needed to do a fearless moral inventory of my flaws. And I said to her, how dare you fucking say that to me? You do a fucking inventory of your flaws. You fucking people stole me from my mother, right? And I think you see, and I'm not saying there's not value in doing a moral inventory of your flaws, of course, but you begin to see what's happened is we've got these complex forms of distress, right? Whether it's depression and anxiety or attention problems or addiction, which obviously I've written different books about all three. And we've had this very simplified cookie cutter response to everyone in the world, as if everyone in the world has one cause of those problems and one set of solutions. And that has really betrayed people, right? It has denied the complexity of the problem. It's often made people blame themselves more because the solutions we've offered people are not right for lots of, the one solution we've offered is not right for lots of people, although it is right for some, of course.
Sure.
That's so good clarifying that.
It's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry,
Johan. No.
No.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And
Unbelievable.
we were saying that with the stolen focus, and then changing completely directions like that. We're looking
Yes.
at you. He's a good-looking man. He's got that beautiful skin, and even you sort of said that too. And with weight, and you're sort of talking about that with the obesity thing. Now you've openly you talk about your struggles, and and with your book, The Magic Pill, and you talked about Ozempic. And can you share where we're at with that now, and with your thoughts and how things are now? Is it more mainstream?
Yeah. This is what my most recent book, Magic Pill, is about. So it's a struggle with my weight. I always think about a specific moment I had where one of the low points of my fatness was it was just before Christmas Eve 2009. I'll never forget this moment. And I went to my local branch of KFC for lunch, and I said my standard order, which is so disgusting I'm not going to repeat it to you. And the guy behind the counter said, "Oh, Johan, I'm really glad you're here." And I was like, "Okay." And he said, "Wait a minute." And he went off behind where they fry all the chicken and everything. And he came back with every member of staff and a massive Christmas card in which they'd written, "To our best customer." And they'd all written these
Are you kidding?
personal messages to me. And one of the reasons
Colonel
my heart
Sanders
sank,
would love you.
one of the reasons my heart sank is I thought, this isn't even the fried chicken shop I come to the most. How can this be happening to me? So yeah,
I love your honesty.
I had
Thrilled but not.
Seriously,
Seriously.
most of my adult life, and
I love how he laughs at himself.
Yeah, it's healthy. It's true.
So we're at this kind of astonishing moment, right? So I've noticed in the Australian coverage of the GLP-1, the new weight loss drugs, that they're still quite often being referred to as a fad or a craze. First thing people need to understand is it's not a fad or a craze. There's been a staggering scientific breakthrough. Scientists have discovered what controls human weight, right? And we now have drugs that can control human appetite. That's an extraordinary breakthrough. And so for my book Magic Pill, I started taking Ozempic, and I went on this big journey to figure out, is this, what is this going to mean for all of us? What does it feel like to take them? What are the ups and downs? What are the benefits and the risks? And it was kind of mind-blowing, actually. I mean, it's a really weird thing when you start taking these drugs. So the way they work is on a physical level is actually really simple. If you ate something now, doesn't matter what it is, after a little while, if you ate enough, your pancreas will produce a hormone called GLP-1. And GLP-1 is just your body's signal going, hey, you've had enough, stop eating. It's the brakes, basically. But natural GLP-1 only stays in your system for a couple of minutes and then it's washed away. So you get the signal to stop, but you can kind of power through it if you want to. What these drugs do is they inject you with an artificial copy of GLP-1 that, instead of staying around in your system for a few minutes, stay in your system for a whole week. So it means that after you start taking them, it's like trying to drive with the brakes on. I'll never forget, just after I started taking them, I went to a cafe just up the road from where I am now. And I went in and I ordered what I used to get every morning for breakfast, which was a huge chicken roll with loads of mayo in it.
The chicken.
Did you win an award in that cafe?
Yeah, exactly.
The number one chicken burger award.
Exactly. If chickens ever develop an advanced consciousness, like, they'll remember me as like their Hitler figure. But I went in and and normally I would have that, I'd wolf it down and I'd still want some crisps or something. And I had like 4 mouthfuls and I just felt full. I didn't want any more. And I remember Tatiana, the woman who runs it, going like, when I left, she was like, "Are you sick?" Because she'd never seen me leave any food before. And yeah, so there's a lot we know and a lot we don't know about these drugs, but this is I think that, and there are many great things that are going to flow from these drugs and some really, really bad things that are going to flow from these drugs, and both have begun. But yeah, this is an extraordinary moment, and I hope Magic Pill is a chance for people to sort of think it through and think through what it'll feel like, but also what the implications of this are going to be for all of us.
So my question to you is, because we will be running out of time shortly, and if you could make it more succinct, is
I'm very bad at succinct, sorry.
Don't you love it?
We love
it's
your
like
stories.
10 p.m. I've got the wine now. For example, if there's many roads to addiction, and one of them can be an eating disorder, like eating too much and putting on weight, do you think, and I don't know, I'm not, no judgment whatsoever, just a question because I'm curious, is it possible that people that can take Ozempic and then lose the weight and they'll move the addiction onto something else, is my question.
Yeah, I've got a whole chapter on this. It's a really astute point. So there are 5 different reasons why people eat. Only one of them is like the obvious one, to like feed your body. The rest are psychological. And I had a really weird experience where when I started taking it, I was getting everything I wanted, right? I lost a load of weight. My back pain went away. My neighbor's hot gardener kept hitting on me. It was great. Actually,
I told you he's looking good, isn't he?
I didn't feel better. I actually felt worse.
Really?
I was like, this is weird. Why do I feel worse? And I realized, for me, in the environment I grew up in, you know, I ate to calm myself down. I ate to soothe myself, right? In fact, and I would eat in a very specific way. I would eat till I felt stuffed, and that would calm me down. And I couldn't do that on the Ozempic. You physically can't do it. You would throw up if you tried to. And I realized, now obviously there are better ways for me to soothe myself, which I've had to learn, than KFC, right? But for a lot of people, this is one of the things I think I really wish I had known in advance. For a lot of people, these drugs will activate the underlying psychological forces that led you to overeat in the first place. Now, that's not true for everyone. There are many reasons why people overeat. We live in an environment saturated with processed foods that actually undermine our ability to ever feel full, which is why obesity has exploded, the main reason why obesity has exploded. But yeah, you know, I think it's a really astute point, and the answer is yes. And there are people who are transferring to, you know, other forms of compulsive behavior as a result.
Right. It was interesting when we saw, and you've been, I have to ask you too how Oprah was, you know, been on her show, but when we saw Oprah in Sydney too, she was talked quite openly about, you know, being on Ozempic or the other, you know, drug. And but it's also, she said that her sort of like aha moment too was when she heard one of the doctors say, it's not really your fault, it's a disease. Yeah. You know, that obesity is a disease. Some people, yes, but some people don't have that. And can eat, whereas some are just naturally, you know, have that disease, and that's
so
what.
Every now and then, Oprah texts me because we've sort of become friends.
Yes.
And whenever she does, I'm just like, "Shut up, everyone! Oprah needs me."
I bet it's the hotline. It's the red phone.
I love it. What did she say?
I'm not going to read out Oprah's text.
No, I love it.
She is. Like, I was like, in addition to A Country Practicing Sons and Daughters, me and my grandmother would then watch Oprah. And I'm very, very sad that I can't tell my grandmother that I became friends with Oprah. But she would have been, that would have been like, to a person in the Middle Ages being told to became the Pope or something. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But no, I had to, Oprah is, and it's like a really stupid and obvious thing to say, she's so fucking clever, right?
Yes.
Like, she's so... It's interesting. Every time I see her, she has a written list of questions she wants to go through, and she listens and she takes it. And you're like, and I've met a lot of like billionaires, right? And they are not like that. Right? Like you just become.
She's grounded.
Unbelievably grounded, but so like. I mean, she's one of the most impressive. I think she's tied for the cleverest. She's one of the 3 cleverest people I've ever met, along with Noam Chomsky and Germaine Greer. Like,
wow, and you've met so many. I talk about amazing. Professors and highly intellectual people. Wow, that's
when we
incredible.
met her, I felt like she was vibrating. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm very quite energetic.
Yes, yeah.
And I remember she put her arm around me, and I went. And it wasn't because I'd actually had food poisoning, ironically.
Ironically, she did.
So I was sick as a dog.
Like we went to a KFC afterwards or something similar.
I had to
that
eat.
one. It was so
crazy.
funny.
But I remember her putting her arm around me, and there was like I could see light coming off her.
Yeah.
So she's enlightened.
She is.
And it's all about she wakes up and wants to give back. And what a gift. And you are too.
Yeah, you certainly are.
Finishing up.
She does
you
everything
are.
with intention, and,
yeah.
and to our listeners too. And you're
She's
going to have to tune
beautiful.
into our one too.
Yeah.
She's actually said she's coming on our podcast. So what a thrill. And as we know with Oprah, you know, she only says things with intention. But, well.
Send her my love.
Yes,
name
yeah.
me.
We will.
We absolutely will.
The happiest moment of my life, with no exceptions, is there was a film made out of one of my books, and the film is called The United States versus Billie Holiday, and Oprah was a big backer of the supporter of the film, and particularly when Andra Day, who's the lead actress, she was nominated for the Best Actress Oscar, and Oprah was a big champion of Andra, and so when they do the the campaign for her to Oscar voters to make her to get people to vote for her. Oprah did some of the events with her and Lee Daniels, the director, and this is literally I should basically just die now because I've peaked at this point, right? So Oprah and Andrew and Lee are being interviewed. Someone sent this to me, the clip, and I can't remember how it comes up, but either Lee or Andra says, "Oh well, Johan, who wrote the book, says blah blah blah," and Oprah said, "Oh, Johan is always right." And I was like,
hello.
But the ultimate dream, I have nowhere further to go in my life.
Are we supermodels? Say yes. He's always right. Johan is always right. One quick question, if you can do one line or two lines.
Sure.
For someone listening feels a little bit lost or disconnected, what's one small thing they could actually do tomorrow?
Know that your pain makes sense. You're not weak. You're not crazy. And step by step, you can identify the underlying factors that are causing your depression and anxiety and be helped to deal with them.
Well done, Johan. Adore you. I even wore my plait because of the Swiss. The Swiss.
Oh, you've got the Heidi. Love it.
The Heidi.
Well, you're Snow White.
Very double denim for you. Because Aussie. Well, we love, we love it that you love Aussies because we certainly love you, and you certainly helping the world. And we want to thank you so much for joining our back fence. But before we let you go, we've got a couple of our signature questions, Johan.
Sure,
Did you want to shoot?
Oh, my God. This is crazy. What makes you happy, Johan?
What makes me happy? My boyfriend, who's downstairs in his little office down there, makes me happy. Boyfriend, my godsons, who are delightful.
I've heard about
brilliant.
him.
They're amazing. Reading makes me happy. It's almost always other people or reading make me happy. Those are the two things.
Love that.
We've got a few books in the background that we can see there.
Yeah, there's a few.
We've got all of yours, and we're excited for your next one that's coming out next year, and that's a crime one. Is that correct? It's taken how many years of research for that one?
I've been researching it since 2011. It's last night
2011.
There's been a few interviews. You've said, I'm finishing the book.
Amazing.
Ridiculous.
Now, if you could share a back fence with anybody on planet Earth, Johann Hari, past or present, who would it be and why?
Oh, past or present? God, that's a difficult one. I'm writing a biography of this amazing man named Noam Chomsky, so I might choose him. Maybe Oprah. Actually, I would choose. What was the name of the woman in A Country Practice who made lamingtons?
Oh my God!
Sam normally knows. We'll find that one out for you. Do you know Sam?
I can't believe I met a whole lot of them when I used to host a So you can give me a high five.
Yeah.
No, I'm only joking.
Wow, that is hysterical. We love that. Yeah. Well, you have to come and
her with my grandmother's energy and. Yeah. So as long as she agreed to make me lamingtons and hand them over the fence.
Well, when you next come out to Australia, we're going to have the lamingtons. We live right on where the sets of Home and Away, Johan, at Palm Beach. So,
and I tell him to piss off myself. I'm angry because I can't get past the road. He's going to slap me for saying that.
Sorry?
What's that?
Have you ever seen Alf Stewart?
Yeah, all of them.
Oh, yeah.
But
we
they're
see them
usually
all.
in my way when I'm trying to walk.
And I love it too. I was walking this morning and it was actually two English guys who go, when do they film Home and Away? So it's certainly, still popular or, all over the world. But look, we are also, thank you so much. We're on YouTube. We like everyone to subscribe so you can watch this. Yeah. And Johan, we like our ratings and we like people to do that. Really helps our community grow. But I don't know whether you know, Johan, Di has her own rating system. So, it's normally out of 5. We like the 5 stars and keep those rating up. But Di, we've got Johan. How many stars do you give Johann Hari all the way from out of 5?
He gets 30,000 for his 30,000 miles of travel, my darling, and trying to discover all the latest information on depression and anxiety. There you go.
Well, that's pretty
30,000 out of 5.
I reckon I'm going to add 90 because that's sort of like he likes 90-year-old women. And
I love it. I love it.
Thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for
joy
listening.
Meeting you, honestly.
And listeners, let us know.
So I have this amazing Australian publicist who will literally taser me if I don't say this. Hermione Lawton, her name is fantastic person. So anyone who wants to know where to get the audiobooks, ebooks, or physical books of my books can go to johannhari.com or we talk mostly about Lost Connections, so you can go to lostconnectionsbook.com. I think that's the website. It's linked from johannhari.com. And you can also see where to follow me on social media, but I will not follow you back because I don't look at it. My system doesn't.
We'll put all this in our show notes, Johan, too.
Exactly, Di. Yeah, we'll put everything a link to all your books, to everything there. We're big supporters of you, and we know all of Australia is as well. So your publicists, we're going to have it all. So for our listeners, it's all going to be there. And thank you. And thank you for our listeners for tuning in, and let us know, anything else that, you sort of feel that's come from this interview, because it's talk about sparking conversations.
Johan, such a pleasure to chat with you, and I hope the listeners enjoyed it as much as we did.
Enjoy that breakfast now.
I'm on Ozempic. I eat one small bowl of dust every 3 days now. But thank you so much. You asked great questions. I really enjoyed that.
Ciao, ciao.